I fought cancer for 3 years. Then I discovered my own daughter had been replacing my pills. My name is Raymond Cole, but most folks just call me Ray. I am 70 years old, and I spent 4 decades building things that did not fall down. Culverts, footbridges, a 3-span over our river that still hums beneath truck tires at dawn. I liked work you could measure with a tape and trust with your weight. I liked a pencil behind my ear, coffee black as tar, and a house that smelled faintly of sawdust and lemon oil. Before the diagnosis, my days were simple and good. I woke before the birds. I made 2 eggs in a cast-iron pan I have owned since the year Helen and I were married. I checked the river level with my first mug and walked the fence line with my second. If a board squeaked, I fixed it. If a hinge sagged, I propped it. I kept a small shop out back where every chisel had a home and every screw jar had a label in block letters. Neighbors brought me broken things and a pie at Thanksgiving. I charged half of what I should have and still slept like a man who had earned it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. Helen was my wife for 44 years. She laughed with her whole face and never bought a shirt without checking the seams. 5 years ago, a stroke took her before sunrise, and for a while the house echoed in a way that made me stand still in hallways so I would not hear it. I learned to make her tomato soup the way she liked it, with a pinch of sugar. I kept her teacup on the second shelf. I did not talk to it. I just knew where it belonged. We raised 2 children in this 1-bathroom place by the river. Mark is the oldest. Steady, practical, living 2 states away with a job that keeps him on airplanes, and a wife who sends me photos of their mountain snow. Lauren is my youngest. She was the child who left smooth creek stones on my pillow and cried at the sight of skinned knees that were not her own. Life hardened her edges. A divorce did not help. Money never felt like enough. After her mother died, Lauren took over holidays in her apartment to save me the trouble, and I let her, because grief is heavy and daughters need chances to feel useful. Then there is Ellie, Lauren's girl, 9 years old and all sunlight. She keeps a notebook of new words she likes and a jar of buttons that do not match. On Fridays, I walked her to the bakery for a cinnamon roll and told her stories about the bridge and the day we set the final beam. We baked banana bread in my narrow kitchen, and she licked the spoon and told on herself. "You saw me," she would say, eyes bright, and I would nod as if catching a thief were a game only we knew how to play. My family is what tethered me when the doctor said the word no one wants to hear. Cancer did not arrive with thunder. It crouched in numbers on a lab report, and then in the mirror when my eyebrows went missing. I organized the pill bottles like I organized socket wrenches. I made charts. I learned terms I wish I did not know. I told myself I could out-habit this thing, that if I showed up on time and did what I was told, my body would remember how to be mine again. Lauren came on Sundays with soup and a tight smile. She called herself my caretaker and pressed for powers of attorney and for selling the house that, in her words, ate money. I chalked it up to worry. I told myself a daughter's briskness was love wearing a harder coat. I did what good fathers do. I gave the benefit of the doubt. I used to think the worst failure a man like me could face was a failed joint or a hairline crack you did not see until winter. I was wrong. The weakest point is not always in the concrete or the steel. Sometimes it is where you put your trust. And I would learn that the danger in my life was not just the sickness in my blood, but the quiet hands in my own kitchen, replacing my pills. The first time the pills tasted like mints, I thought chemo had changed my tongue. Until my daughter suggested I skip the cancer meds. It was a Tuesday, the day after blood work. My oncologist had frowned at the chart in that practiced way, careful not to assign blame. He asked if I was taking everything as prescribed. I said yes. He nodded, but his eyes said maybe. I drove home with my hands tight on the wheel and the seat too big around me. Men like me apologize to no one. But I apologized to the dashboard anyway, as if the old truck could forgive me for not being the version of myself who carried fence posts without a grunt. When I got home, the house smelled like lemon oil and dust. It has been 5 years since Helen, but sometimes I still expect to hear her step on that second stair that creaks. I opened the pill organizer the way I always do, a motion I could do blind, and tipped the white tablet into my palm. It looked right. Chalk white, round, stamped with an imprint I had memorized. But when it hit my tongue, the taste bloomed sweet and cool, the way childhood toothpaste used to, and I had to fight the reflex to chew. I stood very still with the faucet running. The mint faded, but the unease did not. I told myself it was formulation. Some generics taste different. The pharmacist had said as much once, and I filed the reassurance where I keep other comforts that sometimes fit. I swallowed, drank 2 more glasses of water than I needed, and set the empty cup down so gently it did not even make a sound. On Sunday, Lauren arrived with chicken soup and a folder. The soup was warm. The folder was colder than steel. "Budget," she said, smiling just enough to show she had practiced. I mocked up a few options: taxes, utilities. If we got you into a smaller place, a single-level condo, the numbers would breathe. Power of attorney would make it easier to manage during treatment. Years ago, I'd signed a small convenience power of attorney naming Lauren. It had sat unused in a drawer. She spread the sheets between us on the kitchen table where I taught her to count out bolts in piles of 10. The columns were neat. The summary box at the bottom had 3 options circled in green ink. Sell now. Sell after the holidays. Rent to cover taxes and repairs. There was a line for my pills, too, and she had underlined the cost twice. I looked at her face and saw none of me in it. She could win a stare-off with a statue. "Your medication is making you so sick, Dad," she said. "You barely eat when you are on them. Maybe we take a break and let your body reset." A weekend, 2 days. The doctor would never recommend it, but I am your daughter. I know you. It should have sounded like love. It did not. It sounded like a plan that had been rehearsed in a mirror. "The doctor says the schedule is non-negotiable," I said. She nodded as if checking a box marked "he resisted." Then she slid the pill organizer toward me and flicked the morning lid open with her thumbnail. "Take them now so I can see you do it." I took the tablet. The mint bloomed again. I swallowed it down and my stomach turned a slow circle. "New generic?" I asked, casual as I could make it. "Same thing," she said. "Cheaper." Her eyes did not move from my face. She watched me like a nurse measures breaths in the night. I looked to the sink to hide the way my jaw clenched. In the window, a thin smear of morning light turned the glass into a mirror, and my reflection stared back. An old man with a jaw like a clamp. I remembered Lauren at 8, kneeling by the creek in a yellow raincoat, arranging pebbles by size. I remembered her telling me which ones were lucky and which ones were just pretending. I remembered believing her. After she left, I took the pharmacy bottle out of the cupboard. The label had a new crease that my fingers found before my eyes did. The cap was nicked in 2 places that had not been there last week. The bottle felt too light in my hand, like a tool you expect to have weight and do not trust once it does not. I tipped 3 tablets into my palm and lined them up like soldiers. The imprint looked right. The smell did not. There was a sweetness to it, a chalky scent that did not belong in a medicine cabinet. I put them back and told myself to stop. Paranoia is an easy hobby when you live alone. Bridges fail when you start seeing ghosts in the calculations. Men like me trust measurements, not feelings. The next day, I went to the pharmacy under the excuse of buying cough drops for Ellie. I asked about my refill dates the way an old man asks about the weather. Like conversation, not concern. The pharmacist clicked a few keys, frowned at the screen, and said, "Looks like someone picked up the last one early with your authorization on file." "Everything all right?" "Everything is fine," I said. and walked out with cough drops and a mind that would not sit still. On Wednesday, Lauren came by at noon. She walked straight to the cabinet and moved like she belonged there. She touched the pill bottle, then the big plastic tub behind the flower. I had never noticed that tub before in a way that meant anything. Now it was a lighthouse in the fog. She put 2 tablets in the organizer and wiped the rim with her thumb. No humming, no chatter, just the precision of a person who has practiced this movement so often it is muscle memory. "Ellie has a spelling test," she said over her shoulder. "If you feel too weak to see her this Friday, that is okay. She knows you are trying." Trying, such a small word to hold a life. I wanted to ask. I wanted to pick up the big plastic tub and hold it under her nose and say, "What is this exactly? And why does it smell like a dentist's office?" I wanted to ask why my body, which already had a war to fight, should have to arm itself against the people who eat at this table. Instead, I watched. I have learned that sometimes the only repair you can make is to keep your hands steady and your mind sharper than the blade. 2 nights later, Ellie sat at my table and swung her legs while we mashed bananas with a fork. She told me about the test words, thunder, autumn, remember, and then said, as if reading a note someone had slipped her, "Mom says your pills are too strong for you. She said she found a nicer kind, a nicer kind." I took the fork from her and set it down. The click it made on the bowl sounded like a nail tapped twice into a stud. I felt something old wake up in me, a job site instinct I had not used since the day a young man tried to hide a cracked beam with paint. You do not accuse, you do not shout. You take a step back and see the whole structure, and then you measure, and you mark, and you cut true. "Does your mom think I am silly for following the doctor so carefully?" I asked, light as I could. Ellie frowned. "She says you do your best. She says sometimes best is not enough." I smiled so she would not see my heart fall. We put the bread in the oven. We washed the bowls. We played our old game where she tries to steal a chocolate chip while I am not looking and I pretend I did not see. But I saw everything that night. The mint, the bottle, the tub, the careful thumb on the rim, and the way Lauren's voice never trembled when she talked about the house, the money, the paperwork, the word easier, the word sooner. Suspicion is a slow river at first. Then it picks up speed in places you cannot see, working the banks, taking dirt grain by grain until a whole tree keels over without warning. By Friday, I could not stand the taste in my mouth. By Saturday, I had decided that the next time Lauren reached for my pills, I would be watching with both eyes open. She was my daughter. That is the part that hurts. But the way she moved was not the way love moves. It was the way a blueprint looks when someone has drawn it to get you to sign where the line waits. Cold lines, quiet ink, measurements that end exactly where someone wants them to end. By Saturday night, suspicion was not enough. I needed something I could hold in my hand. I went to the shop and came back with a bucket, a crescent wrench, and an old towel that still smelled faintly of motor oil. I slid the bucket under the kitchen sink and knelt, my knees complaining the way old hinges do. The P-trap came loose with a tired sigh. What spilled out was not a clog from bacon grease or hair. It was a chalky slurry that smelled like a dentist's office. Mixed in were half-soft tablets, their edges rounded by time, 1 or 2 still showing the imprint I knew from the label on my cancer prescription. I did not curse. I did not speak. I picked 1 tablet out with my fingertips, rinsed it, patted it dry on the towel, and held it under the lamp. The imprint matched my medication exactly. I slipped it into a zip bag and wrote the date and the time in my careful block letters. The house did not feel like mine for a moment. It felt like a place where someone had been dismantling me 1 pill at a time, flushing the fight right out of me and into the pipes. I put the pipe back together, wiped everything clean, and ran hot water until the new seals settled. Then I climbed the step stool and pulled everything off the top pantry shelf. Behind the flower was not 1 plastic tub of calcium tablets, but 4. Two empty, one nearly so, one newly opened. Each had a club store sticker on the bottom with a black date stamp. The oldest was almost 3 years back. There was a receipt tucked into one, folded into a square. Calcium. Bargain brand. Purchased with my card on a Sunday morning. I lined the tubs up on the counter like evidence and opened my patient portal on the computer. I printed every chart I could. Tumor markers, white blood cell counts, the whole miserable ledger. With a red carpenter's pencil, I drew a line through the months. Plateau, plateau. A small dip here, then back to flat. I pulled down the calendar from the fridge and paged back to that dip. Those 2 Sundays, Lauren had texted that she could not come because Ellie had the flu, and then because her office sent her out of town. The 1 month my body made any headway was the month my kitchen went untouched. I opened our text history and scrolled. I will swing by and set up your pills, Dad. Do not forget to take them while I am here. Put the bottle where I can reach it. The phrasing never changed. Even her little hearts were the same color and size, like stamps pressed by a machine. I put 2 glasses of water on the table. In one, I dropped a tablet from the calcium tub. It fizzed and clouded the water white. In the other, I dropped 1 pill from my sealed bottle. It sank and sat like a stone. I watched the bubbles rise in the first glass and could not stop seeing time in them. Every Sunday, every careful thumb on the rim, every week I told myself the stall was inside me, not inside my kitchen. Shock came over me like cold rain. It stripped me down to bone. But under the shock was something harder. I thought of bridges, of what you do when you find a crack that runs deeper than the surface. You do not paint it. You do not wish it smaller. You shore the load and you fix the span. I set a small camera on the bookshelf with a clear view of the counter. I put a strip of clear tape across the mouth of the pharmacy bottle and drew a hair-thin pencil line that would break if someone twisted the cap. I made a logbook out of a yellow legal pad and wrote a first entry. Sunday, watch hands, do not look away. I carried the zip bag with the rescued pill to the bedroom and tucked it into the top drawer with my old watch and Helen's teacup spoon. I stood there a long time with my hand on the drawer pull. I remembered Lauren at 8 in the yellow raincoat, sorting creek stones by size, telling me which ones were lucky and which ones were only pretending. I had believed her then. I believed the numbers now. 3 years. She had been doing it almost 3 years. I felt something settle inside me, like a beam seated into fresh brackets. The plan was no longer a feeling. It was a sequence. Watch, record, seal, call, end it. I did not sleep that night. I laid out folders the way I used to lay out blueprints, edges aligned, corners square, and wrote a list in block letters. Lawyer, doctor, bank, locks, alerts, proof. When I thought about Lauren, it was not the creek stones that came to mind. It was the way her eyes had slid over my house in small, assessing sweeps these last years. The emptiness of her face when she ran a finger along the mantel, as if dust had a dollar value. The neat budgets she produced with their green circles around sell now, and her tidy notes about ease and liquidity. She complained about taxes like the house itself were a thief. She brought up power of attorney in the same tone you might use to ask if I wanted milk. Her voice never softened when I was sick. It sharpened. She wanted a signature. She wanted control. She wanted timelines that matched her patience. In her math, I was a column that threw the figures off. I took the zip bag with the pill, the receipt with the date stamp, a printout of my stalled numbers, and a still frame from the camera of her thumb on the rim. And I drove to my lawyer's office when the light was barely gray. He has had my trust longer than most people have had a mortgage. He listened without interrupting, reviewed the papers twice, and then spoke slowly, as if laying a beam so it would never have to be moved. "We prepare now," he said. "We do not confront until we can close the loop." We redrafted everything. Healthcare proxy to my son Mark. with a professional backup for when he is on planes. Power of attorney revoked, replaced with a durable one locked inside the trust and only activatable by 2 doctors' signatures and the fiduciary. The house and the land and the accounts moved into that trust with instructions even a storm could not blur. We added a no-contest clause that turned greed into a trapdoor. He wrote a letter to my oncologist himself, requesting clinic-only dispensing and audit trails for every dose. He called a contact at the county who had seen this sort of thing before and began the quiet process of documenting elder abuse with intent to harm. He looked at the still frame again, then at me. "Chain of custody," he said. "Let me hold the originals." At the bank, I sat with a woman whose nails were the pink of Helen's favorite peonies, and we put warnings on my accounts. No third-party pickups, no card replacements without my presence, text alerts for any transactions above a number so small it would catch a carton of eggs. I closed the store account Lauren had insisted I keep for convenience. The notary stamped forms with a clean thump that felt like a heartbeat. At home, I changed the locks and handed a spare key to my neighbor Margot, who has watered my garden since Helen passed. I made a list of who could come and who could not, and I taped it inside the back door where my own forgetfulness could not betray me. A small, wired camera watched the kitchen like a hawk. I put the legal pad on the counter and drew neat lines for dates, times, and hands. My old body hurt from all the moving and deciding. I did not mind the pain. It felt like the sore you get after lifting the first beams of a frame and seeing the shape of a house in the air. Motives are hard to look at when they belong to someone you held on your shoulders at a parade. Lauren had debts. I knew that. She had a divorce that knocked the wind out of her. She had told me more than once that she was tired of scraping by while other people just inherit security. She used the word fairness like a pry bar. She called me stubborn for not releasing value from the house. She talked about right-sizing my life. She said my pills were too strong for someone your age, and that a gentler approach would spare you. Cold words, smooth edges. None of them had room for me as a person with a pulse and a will. I asked myself, standing in my own kitchen with my own name on my deeds, why fight back? I wrote the answers down so I could see them. Because Helen died in a house we paid off nail by nail, and I will not let its rooms be turned into someone else's cash drawer. Because Ellie is watching, and one day she will learn what words like love and duty mean from the way we use them or the way we do not. Because there are men in infusion chairs who look like me, and they deserve daughters who bring soup that is soup, not lies. Because I have worked my whole life to keep weight where it belongs, and this is my last bridge. If I do not shore this span, it will fail in a way that takes more than me down with it. Because something inside me is still a builder, and builders fix what is cracked instead of painting over it. I set the pencil down. The list steadied me the way a plumb line does when the wind is up. On Sunday morning, when Lauren let herself in, everything looked as it always had. The lemon oil on the table, the pill organizer in its bright, harmless colors. But the lock was new. The bottle wore a hair-thin pencil line across the tape. The camera watched. The ledger was open to a clean page. My hands were steady. Shock had done its job. Grief was still a guest at my table. But resolve had moved in and paid the rent. The next move would be hers. The end would be mine. I set 2 glasses on the table, one clouded with chalk, one clear as guilt, and asked Lauren if she wanted to talk about money or about my house. She looked at the glasses first. Her eyes did not widen. They just flicked from one to the other the way a cashier checks a bill under a blue light. Then she smiled the way people do in photographs they do not plan to keep. "Let us talk about being sensible," she said, setting her toad on the chair. "Taxes are due in April. The roof is 20 years old. Insurance jumped. Your medications cost more every month. There is a way to make all of this breathe. The house will not start breathing because someone tells it to," I said. "Neither will I." She reached for the pill organizer and stopped. The pharmacy bottle sat beside it with a strip of clear tape around the cap. A hair-thin pencil line across the seam. I did not look at the line. I watched her try not to. "New habit?" she said lightly, trying not to spill what I have left. She lifted the organizer and tapped 2 morning doors open with her thumbnail. Her hand hovered over the pharmacy bottle, then moved to the big plastic tub behind the flower, then paused again. She settled on the pharmacy bottle. The tape looked like nothing. It was not. "I spoke to the bank," she said, eyes on the lids she had just opened. "They have a senior program. You would qualify for a reverse mortgage. You could stop paying property tax out of pocket. Convert some of your equity into cash. It is math, Dad. It is not personal." "Whose pocket would that cash go into?" I asked. "Mine, while I am here? Or yours, after?" "Do not be cruel," she said, but there was no hurt in her voice. Only the careful, measured tone of a person walking a client through options. "I am trying to stabilize things." For all of us, I slid the cloudy glass an inch toward her. The chalk swirled when it moved, a small storm. "Cough drops doing that now?" she said, glancing at it the way you check a pothole before you drive over it. "You buy a lot of calcium," I said. She blinked once. "Everyone our age needs it. I am not your age." Her smile did not change. "You know what I mean." I leaned back and let the chair creak. I have learned to listen to small sounds. They tell truths people will not. Outside, a truck crossed the bridge and the house hummed a little, the way it always has. It steadied me. "Lauren," I said, keeping my voice level, "what would you do with the money if we sold the house?" She did not pretend not to understand. "Pay off my credit lines. Consolidate the cards. Get out from under the interest. Put aside a college fund for Ellie properly instead of a jar we dip into when she needs shoes. Replace this place with something we can actually maintain, somewhere with an elevator and a super who fixes things, not you on a ladder. You would have liquidity. We would all sleep." There it was. We. The kind of we that eats one person first. "And my treatment?" I asked. "That costs money. Real money." She picked up the folder she had brought, the same gray as courthouse steps, and tapped a line with her finger. I modeled it. "If you took a break from the harsh stuff for a cycle or two, your food budget would go up because you would be able to taste again. Your energy would improve. The numbers look better. And the truth is, none of this is adding years, Dad. It is adding bills." She said it gently. She might as well have said it with a chisel. I reached over and set the clear glass in front of me. The chalky one stayed by her elbow. "They called from the pharmacy," I said. "Asked me about early pickups. Said I had authorized them." "You forget things," she said. "Which day at 9:13 on a Sunday did I forget?" A pause. Thin as paper, sharp as a paper cut. "I run errands for you at odd hours," she said. "That is what caretaking looks like." "Caretaking," I repeated. "Is that what it is called when you change a lock you do not own?" Her eyes flicked to the back door. She had tried the old key when she came in. I had heard the soft misfit click. "Did something happen to the old lock?" she asked. "I installed a better one." She nodded as if we were discussing weatherproofing. "Good. This neighborhood is not what it was." She reached for the pharmacy bottle again and stopped half a breath short of the tape. She pivoted to the tub, lifted the lid, and let it fall back with a soft plastic thump. Not a move, a signal. I saw it. She knew I saw it. "Your pills are too strong for you," she said, conversational as a shampoo ad. "You do not eat when you take them. You fall asleep on the chair. You look worn. There are gentler paths. Cheaper ones," I said. She let the silence sit. The old clock ticked behind it. When she spoke again, it was with the smoothness of laminated paper. "Dad, right now we are paying to watch you shrink. That is not living. What if we reframe this? What if, instead of paying for more misery, we allocate the funds where they do lasting good? Ellie's braces. A reliable car so we are not buying used tires every month. Tuition in a few years so she is not starting life with debt. You could take one last trip out to see Mark without worrying about gas. That is dignity. I pictured the receipt I had found folded into the tub. I pictured the slurry in the trap, the half-dissolved tablets smelling like a dentist's sink. I tried to imagine how many Sundays it took to turn my fight into chalk. I could not. You have built a budget, I said. Where does my house fit in this budget, line by line? She did not look down at the folder. She had it by heart. Sale price minus repairs and fees, netting after capital gains. The mortgage is gone, so it is clean. You could gift a portion now while you are alive to see it do good. The rest sits in a conservative fund. Mark is comfortable. He has told you he does not need anything. Ellie and I, we could finally breathe. You already said that. It is true twice. The camera watched from the bookshelf. I watched the pencil line on the tape the way a surveyor watches a bubble in a level. Lauren looked at my face the way a buyer looks at a bid, gauging, calibrating. I called Mark, I said. He will be here next month. She held my eyes and did not blink. Why? I want his signature on some things. She tilted her head a fraction. You do not need his signature to do what is sensible. I do for what I am doing. What is that? She asked, amused as a cat at the edge of a chair. A budget of my own. Her smile tightened at the corners and disappeared. For a moment I saw the math running behind her eyes, columns falling, new ones rising. You know, she said softly, I have done everything for you. I drive, I shop, I set up your week. She tapped the organizer with a single fingernail. I make this easier. You make numbers easier, I said, not the rest. She folded the folder closed and slid it a few inches toward me like an offer on a table. You cannot afford to be stubborn. I cannot afford to be careless, I said. She glanced at the tape again, just a glance. Then she pushed the organizer toward me and said, Take them now so I can see you do it. The phrase fit in the room like a piece of furniture that had been there for years. My stomach turned once. I opened the morning door, picked up the pill she had placed there, and held it under my nose. Mint. I showed it to her. She looked at it as if it were a button that had rolled under the couch. New generic, she said. Same imprint, I said. She shrugged as if to say, stamps repeat. Insurance prefers it. Insurance prefers me alive, I said. That made her look at me for real. No smile, no softness, just calculation and the edge where fear turns into policy. I prefer you comfortable, she said. Soon. She had the nerve to touch my knuckles then, light as static. Let us not make this uglier than it needs to be. Sign the power of attorney. Let me list the house. Let us stop burning cash to chase a result the doctors say is unlikely. We can smooth this. We can control the shape of the end. I took my hand back. There are ends you cannot control. We sat in the hum of the old refrigerator for 3 long breaths. Next Sunday, she said, standing. I will bring the papers. A realtor I trust is holding a slot for us at 2 next Sunday, I said, also standing. I will be meeting someone else at 2. Who? You will see. We looked at each other then, both of us knowing the picture. She knew I had moved pieces she could not see. I knew she had moved pieces I could prove. Money was the language we were both speaking now. Hers said faster. Mine said no. She picked up her tote. She left the folder. At the door, she tested the lock again on reflex, then let the handle go. Think about Ellie, she said without turning. I am, I said. That is the point. Next Sunday at 2, I did not pour coffee. I laid out a level. The pharmacy bottle sat on the table with a new strip of tape and a hair-thin pencil line across the seam. The pill organizer was empty. The big calcium tub wore its club store sticker like a name tag. A little red light on the camera watched from the bookshelf. In the bedroom, the guest closet door was closed. Behind it, a detective and my lawyer sat on folding chairs with the patience of carpenters letting glue set. Lauren arrived with her tote and that same practiced smile. "Realtor at 3, she said. "We will be in and out." "In and out," I said, and slid the organizer toward her. She opened the morning doors with her thumbnail. The movement was so clean it looked like choreography. She reached for the pharmacy bottle, and I said, too casually, "Top shelf is a reach for me these days. Would you mind?" Her hand went to the pantry without a glance. Lid off. 2 chalky tablets in her palm. The sweet smell lifted. She set them into the organizer with her careful thumb, then turned to rinse her hands at the sink. Automatic, efficient. No wasted motion. When she came back, she peeled the tape from the pharmacy bottle, tipped 3 of the real pills into the drain, and tightened the cap until the pencil line rejoined. "Take them now so I can see you do it," she said. I was already standing. The closet door opened. My lawyer stepped out first, face unreadable. The detective followed, badge clipped to her belt, voice calm. "Ms. Cole," she said, "we need to talk." Lauren did not startle. She did not look at the camera. She looked at the chalked glass on the table, then at me, then at the detective as if we were a committee she had not been told about. "About what?" My lawyer pressed the space bar on his laptop. The footage played. Her hands, the tape, the sink, the careful thumb. The microphone caught the soft clink of pills against porcelain, and her words as clear as a nail tapped home. "Take them now so I can see you do it." When the detective paused the video, the house was so quiet I could hear the old clock breathe. "That is not what it looks like," Lauren said, and her tone was not outrage, it was policy. "I am helping my father manage a complicated regimen. He gets confused. He asked me to simplify. He can be stubborn. He does not always." The detective held up a palm. "We will hear all of that, but we will also hear from the pharmacist who printed a record of early refills, flagged by your father's account. We will hear from the oncology nurse who documented his numbers stalling during home dosing and improving under supervised infusions. We will hear from your neighbor who saw you let yourself in on Tuesdays when you said you were only coming Sundays. And we will hear from your father's bank about attempts to add yourself as an authorized user last month. For today, we are preserving evidence on cue. My phone buzzed. A text from the bank fraud department confirming the stop I had placed on all third-party changes. The screen glowed like a small, hard sunrise. Lauren's face went still. For years she had been walking me through columns and totals. Now she was seeing mine. "Dad," she said, pivoting to me, voice softening by degrees. "Tell them you wanted me to help. Tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them you do not want this." I looked at the organizer. I looked at the line on the tape. I looked at the folder she had brought last week, the one with cell now circled in green. I thought of 3 years of Sundays, of calcium tubs lined up like a timeline, of the white slurry in my trap, and the way my blood numbers had held like a breath until the month she did not come. "I do not want this," I said, and watched her relief begin. "But we are here because you already made it." The detective handed her a paper. "This is a notice of investigation for elder abuse with intent to cause harm. Do not contact your father outside of counsel. Do not enter this residence. We will collect the containers you have been using today." Lauren's eyes finally flicked to the camera. Just a flick. Then she set her jaw and said, "You are making a mess out of a solvable problem." "Money is a solvable problem," I said. "What you did is not." She tried one more angle, quick as a blade. "Ellie's braces. Her school. You are choosing strangers over your own blood." "I am choosing my life," I said, "so I can be there to see hers." We did not raise our voices. We did not slam doors. The detective cataloged everything with the steadiness of a person who has measured worse rooms. The pharmacy bottle with the broken tape, the calcium tubs with their date stamps, the receipt folded into a square, the organizer with the morning doors open, the 2 chalk tablets and their smell. She bagged my zip-locked pill from the trap. She logged chain of custody in neat block letters that matched my own. From there, it moved like a line of dominoes finely tipped. At the clinic on Monday, my oncologist took one look at the footage and wrote a statement that used words like non-adherence unlikely and external tampering suspected. He scheduled all oral doses to be dispensed and witnessed in the infusion suite. He ordered labs to establish a new baseline. The nurse who typically remembered Ellie's spelling words now documented each pill like it was a diamond. At the pharmacy, the manager met me in a small office with a printout of pickup logs and a face that said he wished he had looked closer sooner. "We will give a sworn statement," he said, sliding the papers across. "And your account now requires you in person with identification. No exceptions." At the bank, the fraud officer flagged last month's attempt to add an authorized user at 9:13 a.m. on a Sunday. "We will note this in our report," she said, "and there will be no changes without you present." Adult Protective Services called that afternoon. Their investigator spoke to me like I was a man and not a file. She scheduled a home visit, then called the detective to coordinate. My lawyer filed for a temporary restraining order that barred Lauren from my property and from making any medical decisions on my behalf. The judge signed it the same day, a black stamp thumping the paper like a gavel in miniature. Word travels in small towns. Margot from next door brought over a casserole and a memory. "She was here on Tuesdays, Ray." Always quick, always alone. I thought she was being a good daughter. She wrote it down. She signed it. By Wednesday, Lauren's employer's HR line had left a voicemail asking for a statement about a personal matter affecting scheduling. By Thursday, a uniform knocked on my door to serve an interview notice. He was polite. He patted my shoulder like he was checking a joint for play. Ellie called from her mother's phone that evening. One quick, "Hi, Grandpa," before a click. I told the detective. She noted it and told me not to call back from my line. "Let us keep the boundaries clean," she said. I sat at the kitchen table and looked at Helen's teacup on the second shelf and felt the hurt move through me like weather. Then I picked up my pencil and wrote the time down in my ledger. Write, record, steady. On Friday morning, my numbers inched in the right direction for the first time in months. The nurse smiled and said nothing precious, only, "Keep showing up." I nodded and did. By Friday afternoon, the detective called. "We are moving forward," she said. "We will request charges for felony elder abuse and tampering with prescribed medication. The district attorney wants to see you Monday." "Do I need to bring anything else?" I asked. "You have already brought everything," she said. I hung up and looked around my kitchen. Same table, same lemon oil, same humming bridge in the distance. The only new thing was the shape of what I knew, and it made the room steadier. The legal fight had begun, and it was loud now. Papers stamped, phones ringing, footsteps on my porch that did not belong to family. But inside me, the noise quieted. I had the footage. I had the logs. I had the tape line, broken on camera. I had a doctor who believed evidence, not excuses. I had a lawyer who put every plank in the right order. And I had a reason bigger than revenge. A little girl who deserved to see what a spine looks like when the wind picks up. Escalation looks like chaos from the outside. From the inside, it felt like a frame finally braced, the span shored, the load moving where it should. I set my pencil down, folded the ledger closed, and waited for Monday with both eyes open. Court did not look like television. It smelled like varnish and tired paper, and the microphone crackled when I breathed too close. Mark sat at my left, his hand a weight on the table when mine shook. There was a row of strangers behind us who all knew my name for an hour and would forget it by supper. Lauren sat across the aisle with a lawyer in a suit the gray of winter roads. She wore the same practiced smile she brought to my kitchen, but it fit looser here, like a dress borrowed from a friend who is taller. They played the video first. No music, no narration. Just a kitchen, a bottle with a thin pencil line across a strip of tape, a plastic tub, a sink, a pair of hands moving with a competence that had once made me proud. Then her voice, domestic and low. "Take them now so I can see you do it." The sound landed in the wood of the benches and stayed there. When they asked me to speak, the judge called it a statement. It felt like a ledger. I told the court my name and the bridge I built and how lemon oil smells in an empty house. I said, "I am not confused about my pills or my memory or my keys. I am confused about what happened to the girl who used to leave creek stones on my pillow and tell me which ones were lucky." I said I had been fighting the cancer in my blood for 3 years, and without realizing it, I had been fighting a second cancer in my house, the kind that calls itself sensible and adds columns until a person looks like debt. I did not say hate. I said cost. "You priced my days," I told my daughter. "You turned time into math and called it mercy. But I was still here inside those days, Lauren. I was still a man eating soup, checking the river, waiting for my granddaughter to tell me which words she learned at school." Her eyes did not leave my face, but they did not enter it either. She did not cry. She did not flinch. If anything, her calm deepened, like a lake in shadow. Her lawyer spoke next in sentences that sounded like brochures. Stress, single mother, medical trauma, denial. He called her actions misguided care. He used phrases that tried to make the room softer. He never said money out loud. He said stability and right-sizing and dignity. Lauren stood to speak and chose the smallest words she could. "I wanted it to end gently," she said. "He was so sick. He was shrinking. I thought, why make him suffer for months if it will not change the end?" She spread her hands like she was laying out a tablecloth and tucking the corners under. "The house is too much. The bills are too much. I was trying to keep the future from swallowing us, U.S." That little word she used like a blanket big enough to cover only 2 people if you folded it just right. I asked for 1 more minute. The judge looked tired and kind and said yes. "Money is not a villain," I said. "Money pays for roofs and braces and gas to get to the clinic. But it cannot be the reason a man is asked to stop showing up for his own life. You told me I could be comfortable sooner. You never said you meant comfortable for you." For a heartbeat, something in her face faltered. Not remorse, recognition. As if we had finally arrived at the same drawing and could admit which lines were load-bearing and which were lies. The nurse spoke briefly and called me by my first name the way she always does. She said, "Ray shows up," and I held that like a small hot stone in my coat pocket. The pharmacist apologized to the room. Margot from next door looked at her hands and said, "Tuesdays." The detective said very little and let the video speak. Mark squeezed my shoulder once and did not let go. I kept waiting to feel the old rage. It did not come. What came was a clean, hard sorrow that did not burn but held. It held me to the seat. It held my voice steady. It held the difference between love and leverage up where everyone could see it. The judge took a long time. He watched the clip again. He turned the pages as if the paper might confess. He spoke finally in a voice that could have belonged to a father or a teacher or a man who fixes fences on his own time. He said betrayal. He said harm. He said the law's words, but he also said mine in his own way. You priced a person. He did not talk about years. He talked about boundaries that would not move. He talked about counseling not as a favor but as a requirement that might keep a child safe. He talked about how I would not have to see her unless a professional in the court said it was time. He talked about restitution like a straight line drawn slow. Then he asked if I had anything else to say. I thought of Helen's teacup, second shelf. I thought of Ellie, legs swinging under my table, turning the word thunder into something that sounded like a drum. I thought of the river throwing back the sky, of the bridge humming under truck tires, of the way steel sounds when it settles into brackets true. I thought of all the Sundays and the mint on my tongue, and the way the house had felt for a moment like a stranger. I'm going to keep showing up, I said. That is all. When the gavel came down, it made less noise than you would expect. People shifted. Papers whispered. The microphone hissed and went still. Lauren looked at me for a long time, and I saw the whole of her life at once, from the yellow raincoat to the gray folder, from the creek stones to the chalk in my sink. She opened her mouth and closed it. What apology could fit here? What excuse could build a bridge across this? They led her away without cuffs, and I was glad of that for reasons that surprised me. Not mercy, not pity, just the last respect I could locate in a room that had taken so much. Outside, the air had that late afternoon taste of metal and leaves. Mark and I stood on the courthouse steps and did not speak. Across the street, the diner's sign flickered the way it has since 1987. A boy on a bicycle rattled past with a deck of playing cards clipped to his spokes to make the noise of an engine. Life went on like it always does, without pausing to check who had won. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, a picture of Ellie's spelling test with a star, and the word remember spelled right on the first try. No caption, just the picture, and the careful block letters that look a little like mine. I sat on the stone rail, old enough to know better, and I did not break. I thought of the list I had written in my kitchen. Because Helen. Because Ellie. Because the men in the chairs. Because the span. Because I still know how to fix what I can reach. Mark said, "Dad?" And I said, "I am here." We started down the steps together. The day was not lighter. It was truer. Somewhere behind us, in a folder in a drawer, a video sat with a date on it and a hair-thin pencil line you could see break if you looked close. Somewhere ahead, there was a kitchen that smelled like lemon oil, a ledger with lines through it, a bridge humming, a girl with a new word she wanted to say out loud. This was the end of the long middle. The next part would be living. Remission came 3 weeks later. My doctor said the word slowly, like it was made of glass. The nurse grinned, pressed the rope into my hand, and Ellie stood on her toes to help me pull. The bell was brighter than I remembered, and the sound blew the dust out of a corner of my heart I had not reached in a long time. Life did not turn into fireworks. It turned into small dailies I had almost forgotten. Coffee that tasted like coffee. 3 slices of bacon without guilt. A walk to the bridge and back without seeing stars. My eyebrows tried to grow in like stubborn seedlings. I let them. I put the pill organizer away and wrote the infusion dates on a calendar that stayed empty. For the first time in 3 years, the house smelled only like lemon oil and something baking. Mark flew in with a toolbox and a lopsided grin and stayed a week. We fixed the hinge on the back door and the squeak on the second stair Helen used to step over out of habit. He hung the quilt she made above the couch, and when I caught the pattern out of the corner of my eye, it felt like a hand on my shoulder. Ellie and I returned to our Fridays. She still steals a chocolate chip while I'm not looking and tells on herself 5 seconds later. We moved our baking into projects that do not disappear in an afternoon. A birdhouse with a roof that will keep out the rain. A bookshelf for the corner where the light is best. She drew a tiny river on the underside of the shelf and said, "So we remember." And I did not trust my voice, so I kissed her hair. The Helen Fund went from a folder on my table to a small office at the cancer center with a corkboard where families pinned thank you notes and gas receipts we paid for. A young mother named Lex called to say the card we sent put her in the chair next to her husband, instead of at a shift she could not afford to skip. I printed the voicemail and pinned it up where I can see it. As for Lauren, justice did not come with a trumpet. It came with a signed plea. 5 years of supervised probation, restitution paid into the fund she used to call sentimental, and a permanent notation that bars her from serving as anyone's caregiver or fiduciary. The restraining order stayed. The trust held. The no contest clause slept like a guard dog that never had to bark. She took a job that pays by the hour and did her community service at the hospital thrift store folding clothes that smell like dryer sheets and old perfume. I heard from the detective that she shows up on time. That is all I needed to know. I do not hate her. That would be a wide door to leave open. I keep it closed. If we ever speak again, it will be after a counselor says it is safe and with a table between us that does not wobble. Until then, the only line I keep open is the one that goes to Ellie. We read together on the porch, and when a truck rolls over the bridge, the whole house hums and she says every time, "Hear it?" like it is a new miracle. On the day the oncologist said the word remission again, this time in a room that did not smell like rain, I walked to the river and skipped 3 stones as far as I could. One for Helen, who would have told me to sit when I needed to sit and stand when I needed to stand. One for Mark, who moved his flights to help me fix what still creaked. One for Ellie, who kept Friday sweet when the rest of the week was salt. Here is the satisfaction. The part revenge never promises but good justice sometimes gives. The math that tried to price my days no longer runs this house. The numbers we keep are different now. How many swings Ellie gets before the light goes? How many birds try the new house in spring? How many people the fund helps sit beside someone they love for 1 more hour? I fought 2 cancers. The one in my blood took medicine. The one in my house took a spine. Both are in remission. The river moves the way it always has. The bridge hums under truck tires. My eyebrows are crooked as fence posts, and the cinnamon is loud again. I am here, and no one is ever going to measure my life for parts again.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.